In this video tutorial, we're going to look at some of the drinks that are very popular in Japan, beginning with tea. Now, this is not Japanese tea, this is Western tea. It's also drunk in Japan. It's quite popular and it's known as kocha, or black tea. And it would look probably in Japan like this. And that would be a typical cup of kocha. Japanese tea is actually known in English as green tea, and they call it simply honourable tea, or cha. This is one of these words that's so common that it basically always has an honorific o in front of it, even when it's used by men. Obviously, when it's used by women, it should have that honorific o in front of it. And Japanese or cha, or green tea, is served traditionally in this kind of teapot, a very small teapot, and the cups that it's served in don't have any handles. And of course, you would never add anything to a lovely cup of ocha. You wouldn't dream of adding sugar or milk or anything like that. Ocha, very healthy and perfect as it is. Next we have water, omizu. You can see the honorific o there is in brackets because it's sometimes referred to, particularly by men, as simply plain old mizu. But I'd like you to put the honorific o to make your Japanese polite. Sake, which sometimes is pronounced sake, I think in English. Sake, that's the traditional Japanese rice wine. Again, it's got an optional honorific, so you can either simply say sake or osake. Osake is traditionally served in, again, a very small earthenware container or bottle, and it's poured into these little tiny sake cups. It can be served hot. It's enjoyed hot when it's very cold outside, and it can also be drunk cold. And the custom in Japan is that if you are sharing a drink with your friends, then you need to serve not yourself but the others around you. And because it's a very tiny cup, then the custom is to constantly be refilling your friends' cups with very small amounts. These days, coffee is very popular in Japan, and the word they use is derived directly from English, and it's pronounced kohi. They also are very fond of canned coffee, and that's because in Japan there are many vending machines everywhere, and they serve hot and cold drinks mostly, but also you can find vending machines with other things. But canned coffee is known as kan kohi. Now the kan there, you might imagine, is from the English word can, but that's not the case. The kan here actually is from a Chinese word meaning a small earthenware container, and the Chinese pronunciation of the character which is used for this is in fact kan, so that's a coincidence. Kan kohi. This is a picture of a vending machine with all these different types of kan kohi, and you can see the price. There it is, it's 100 yen, 100 yen, and under here it says atatakai, and that means warm. So these drinks are all warm. Next we have juice. Juice, that's easy. Juice. And orange juice is very popular in Japan as it is in the West. Orange juice. Coke is also popular, and they use cola to represent Coke or Coca-Cola. Cola. Beer is also popular. It's known as biru. And Japanese beer actually has some very famous manufacturers, and many people in the West also enjoy various brands of Japanese beer. Here's an example of a Japanese brand of beer. It's Suntory Biru. Wine is also drunk in Japan, but not very commonly, and it's known as wine. Wine. And finally, milk. Now, milk was not really a part of the Japanese diet before the Second World War. They weren't really very big on dairy products at all. But since the Second World War, dairy products have become a part of the Japanese diet. And there are two words for milk. One of them is the Japanese word, and it's gyunyu. You don't need to remember that one because we use the English-derived word miruku. Now, there's only one kanji that we need to know for this part of our textbook, and it's the kanji here which represents tea. And we're going to use it to write ocha, ocha. And of course, instead of adding o, if we were to put kou, that would be also kocha, black tea or western tea. So let's have a look at the elements that make up cha. On the top of our kanji, we've got this very familiar element, and it goes across ich, ni, san. And we call that grass because that represents any kind of vegetation, and that's perfect for tea because of course it's made from those very tiny top leaves of a tea bush. So there we have the element which indicates that tea is made from a plant. Now the bottom element down here, that actually has the sound which means bitter, but that's not very useful for us, so we're going to think of it as a roof, because when you have a cup of tea in Japan, you often sit in a beautiful tea house which has a nice roof on top, and then particularly on a hot day, a refreshing cup of green tea is brilliant. And you might remember that this element here going across and down, this is the katakana ho, left and right. And if you remember the story for ho, it's not pleasant. That's a man with his arms stretched out. There's his body. It's a very hot day, and that's his sweat pouring off. So we've got vegetation on the top representing the tea leaves. We've got the roof of the tea house that we're going to be sitting in to enjoy our tea. And there we've got the katakana ho to remind us that a cup of tea is very refreshing on a hot day. And let's conclude our video tutorial with a look at a Japanese tea house. This is where Japanese people traditionally would go and still do go to enjoy a cup of tea prepared in the traditional manner that's known as the tea ceremony. You may have heard of the tea ceremony. It's one of the classic Japanese cultural traditions, and it illustrates just how important drinking tea is in Japanese culture.